AI can't necessarily make a burger, but it sure can help you learn what kind of burger to put on your menu. Hello, this is Jonathan Mays, Editor-in-Chief of Restaurant Business, and in this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, we continue our examination of the impact of AI in the restaurant industry. Our senior menu editor, Pat Colby, has spoken with a number of chefs over the past year about how they use AI in menu and recipe development. We start with Christian Frangiatis, the executive chef of One by Spork in Pittsburgh. They use AI in a lot of big and subtle ways.
How do you use AI for recipe development and menu ideation and even research?
Yeah, in quite a few ways, surprisingly. And I'm fairly new to it. I'm an older guy. I didn't grow up with computers in the school and that kind of thing. But I use it a lot in recipe development. It's really great for a lot of things. It's good to kind of nail down ratios. It's good to get times and temperatures. It's good to check on parameters. And we use it for a lot of specific things. So we're always developing recipes for One by Spork, and we have a food lab here. And so a lot of the stuff is very sciencey. So there are things that we do, like we make vinegars and we make garums and we make mesos and amino pastes. We make molasses, espumas. We do fluid gels, lots of different squeals and things along that nature. The menu's always changing. Our menu features like 5 welcome bites as soon as you come in. And then there's this progression of sort of like 7 savory courses and 2 desserts. So we're constantly changing it. We have an urban farm right next door to our restaurant. And I think it's maybe the only urban farm in the city limits. So we do a lot of things with produce, and we do a lot of preservation to try to extend that season throughout the winter months and the fall months and colder months. And so we're constantly using AI to help us either, I would say more specifically, a lot of times we use it to nail down recipes or to improve recipes or to elevate recipes. So an example of that would be like we were searching to do a very good beet molasses. And I had a recipe that I had developed for beet molasses. And we were using it, trying to do one where we didn't have to boil the molasses on the stove, but that we could use a roto evaporator to achieve the molasses consistency and taste without adding heat and without losing sort of like the freshness of the beets. So basically I said, well, look, I asked AI, I said, I've developed a recipe where I'm juicing the beets and I'm adding some honey to it and a touch of lemon and running it through a roto evaporator. But I think there may be a better way. What would happen if I added koji to it? And they said, oh, this would be, perfect. If you add koji to it, you would see that you probably wouldn't have to add any additional sweetener. And so the way that I use AI a lot is I will bounce questions off it and it will kind of tighten up and lead me in a certain direction. But I have some basic knowledge about what I'm asking the question about to begin with. So once it told me I could use koji, at that point I said, okay, well, can I use cooked beet juice or must it be raw beet juice? And it said it didn't really matter one way or another. I said, when I run it through the roto evaporator, should I put some of the distillate back into it? And so once you distill something in a roto evaporator, there's 2 parts of it. There's the base part and then there's a distillate. So it turns out that it said that I could try putting the first half of the distillate back into the molasses and discard the second half of the distillate because it may have an earthy taste. And that, in fact, turned out to be true. And so once we added the distillate back into the rotovat beet molasses that we had done with koji, both things turned out to be true. We didn't need to add any sweetener. And the overall beet molasses was really elevated. The other question that I wound up asking it for this particular recipe is how fast should I run the roto evaporator and what effect does this have? And what it said was that I should run it slowly at like 100 RPMs per minute because in running it slowly, it maintains a lot of the natural flavors in the base and doesn't transfer them over to the distillate. Whereas my inclination would have been to run it faster, to get it to boil faster, to get it to reduce faster, because it's basically boiling under vacuum.
It's pretty amazing that AI knows so much about that because it's very technical information and it isn't that widely available. I mean, they would, have to do like a lot of, I don't know, I don't know how AI actually works, but I would assume they would have to go to a pretty large database to find all of that.
Really, really quick. In some things, it is not tremendously accurate, but in some things, it's very, very accurate. It seems to be very, very accurate when you're discussing menu development. So, okay, so another example would be that I was trying to come up with a squash espuma, and I had a recipe for that. And I asked AI, what if I added miso, like squash miso, to the squash espuma? And they
Mhm.
said that they thought that that would be a really good idea to do that. And it's then suggested like what hydrocolloid to use, which in
Mhm.
this case was soy lecithin. I didn't think that soy lecithin would particularly be that great of a hydrocolloid to use for that. So I said, listen, I plan to hold this espuma hot, and so I think there might be a better gelling agent to use for the foam. And then came back with methyl cellulose. And it said basically it said, yes, you're exactly right. There is a better gelling agent to use for the foam. We would now suggest, based on what you told us, methyl cellulose. So, and then we did that, and it was perfect. So the addition of koji, the addition of methyl cellulose, wound up making a spuma that was perfect for the dish that we had designed it for. Could I have got there by myself without AI? Probably, but I certainly got there quicker with less experimentation. But my overall point is that if you just go in and you say, "Hey, I need a recipe for squash espuma," you might not get the greatest results. But if you have some knowledge about what you're looking for and where you're trying to go with a certain recipe, I find AI to be very, very, very helpful.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to have some input into it from your base of knowledge as
Ton,
well.
a ton.
Yeah.
Because you know what you're trying to do and you know where you're trying to get to. And this is where it can be very, very helpful to try to get you there. Where it wasn't so helpful, for example, was I had to write a HACCP plan. So a hazard analysis critical care plan, basically for the health department to do misos and kojis. And I tried using AI, and that was very, very difficult and not extremely helpful. And a lot of the information was incorrect.
Mm.
And I would have, but what you can do with AI is you can say, okay, write me a list of sanitation chemicals that I should use to clean, my utensils for my koji room, and
Mhm.
then it'll give you something. You'll say, okay, we'll modify that to with the understanding that I have a low temperature dishwasher, and then you always say modify this for this until you eventually get to where you need to be. So it's almost like you're having a running dialogue with a person, but it's very, very quick.
So, do you use a certain chat bot? Is it Chat GPT or is it
I
different?
use Chat GPT, like the pro version that you pay for.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I understand there's a lot of them out there, and from what I understand, some of them may be superior. I don't know. I haven't had found it necessary to do that, to investigate another option yet with that.
Well, it
But
sounds like you're getting good results with the option you're using. So,
sure,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of things that it's been really helpful for. It's
yeah.
helpful when you're trying to choose gelling agents. So like we're always gelling something, fluid gels or clear wrappers made of lactose fermented tomato water. And so do I want to use agar? Do I want to use gelling gum? And these kinds of questions are really in its wheelhouse, and they're really helpful.
Do you find that as you use it more, it gets to know you and some of,
Yeah.
like some of the things that you are going to be asking or, some of the things as well?
Yes. So one of the things that I was asking it something about dry aging, something. It surprised me because it was the first time it did this, but it came back to me and it said, well, yes, since you're already dry aging duck at your restaurant, this would be a perfect complement. And you already have it. I didn't mention that, but it knew that I was already doing that. Now
Wow,
maybe I had mentioned it before, but I didn't expect it to pick up on on that part of the conversation.
Right. That's pretty amazing.
And so now that's happened many times. So it
Yeah.
understands what my restaurant is. It understands what we do. It seems to understand our cooking style. And so it kind of gets better and better as we use it.
But you didn't have to feed like a menu into AI to get those results, or
I think it could find a menu on its own.
right. That's for sure. And are you ever generating images to help you visualize what a dish might look like?
No, that's not something I've dealt with. And understand this is all a fairly new phenomenon for me, like a couple months maybe that we started messing around with this at all, because I could see where there could be a lot of other uses
Mm-hmm.
that we haven't even touched on.
Right.
I think there's a virtual assistant aspect of it that could be really, really helpful to where you would never have to miss a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we haven't gotten into any of that, but I think that there's a lot.
And do you think you can use it for like supply chain management or inventory control? Is that something you've played around with?
So probably not. I'm sure it's got capabilities in that aspect. I don't really need that so much because it's such a small operation. I mean, we only feed 16 people a night. So I don't need to do a lot of like clipboard holding and inventory, like that kind of thing. But where it is helpful is it's very helpful with sourcing.
And you mentioned that you can see it expanding to more functions within the restaurant. I mean, do you use it for wine pairings or anything like that? Or I imagine you do wine pairings with your tasting menu.
So we have pairings with the tasting menu, and essentially they're either spirit or spirit free. So we have a whole non-alcoholic aspect to it, and then the spirit pairings are a combination of cocktails and wine.
Oh, fun.
And we have an incredibly talented, really like a bar genius who's my general manager and director of operations, beverage director, all that kind of stuff. And he constantly is riffing off of the stuff that we do in the food lab and moving that over to cocktails and non-alcoholic.
Mm.
So he is using AI in the same way that we do.
And you did mention that you could see it expanding to more functions as you get more used to it and it gets used to you. So,
Yeah. And I think where that would come into would be sort of like in office managerial functions. But I'm not really involved in that. So so my knowledge is much less about that than the other things. But it just makes sense to me that at a certain point that we'll be able to cover some things using AI that we might not be able to physically cover now. Because what can you do if somebody, calls at 2:00 in the morning, wants to make a reservation and wants to know if you can accommodate somebody who is lactose intolerant, right? So I think that there will come a time, probably pretty soon, where AI would be able to handle that part of it. So with us, with everybody who makes a reservation, there's sort of like a follow-up phone call or a follow-up correspondence to make sure that we're able to accommodate. Because the thing with One by Spork, it's called One by because everything is one, right? It's one menu, one table, one pairing, one house, the front of the, no front of the house, back of the house, just one house. And the one thing that we really can't do is or won't do maybe is like really accommodate a lot of different kind of food restrictions, just because there's so many courses and it would just throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. So,
right.
but we do a lot of that kind of like through correspondence. So somebody will make a reservation. They'll say, hey, I'm a pescatarian. And then I'll look at it and I'll figure out, okay, I think we can feed a pescatarian. But that's different than like somebody showing up and sitting down and going like, hey, I'm a pescatarian, which used to happen in the old restaurant.
Even some well-known chefs use AI in a variety of methods. Here's Pat with Jet Tila, who explains all the ways he uses artificial intelligence in menu development.
So Jet Tila, tell me how you use AI to help with menus or the back of the house or any operations.
I'm going to say, so I wear a lot of different hats, right? From a media point of view, from a chef, from a media, from a chef, from operating a restaurant. I mean, AI is probably the most revolutionary, give me the word. Is it, it's not a product, but, advance that I think we've
Innovation,
seen
yeah.
innovation in a long time. So let's just take it from off the top of my head. If I'm an
Right.
operator and on the front of house side, I need to write a menu, it absolutely can help me, create those pretty words and ways to create a menu. I can run I can run a PDF menu into Chat, have it organize it by category. It can either make spreadsheets. It could also make graphics. If I say practical, I just did a huge dinner with the Rams, and I have a dish in mind, and I have a photo that I own of a certain dish, but I needed that dish plated a little differently. I actually, when I'm writing a menu where I have, a team of 10 chefs cooking for a few hundred people, I actually asked it to change that photo up a little to incorporate one other element. I fed my cookbooks into ChatGPT and use it as a database. I use it a lot, and I don't think I've even tapped into the many things that deal with, innovation and AI.
There's also inventory and other issues that chefs and operators need to think about. Here's Pat with Marcus Merritt, the manager of Wiley and Rum in Atlanta, a Cuban-Caribbean fusion restaurant.
Let's start by talking a little bit about how you use AI with inventory management.
Of course, yeah. So I'll say that our AI background really started probably a little over a year ago, just really trying to find ways that we could simplify some of our procedures and things we're doing in the restaurant to help us be able to streamline and just do things a lot faster. And one of the examples, like you brought up, is inventory management, which we know in years past has taken a lot of time, right? So, you're going through your cooler, you're going through your liquor cage, you're writing everything down, then you have to double verify it, sometimes taking, 6 to 8 hours. So we've been able to use a platform through our POS processor Toast called Extra Chef. And so what it does is, now that we have kind of built in the kind of base profile on it, it's now able to predict how much we've sold to something, and we can go back and then just re-edit as needed. So it's cut the time probably by a third.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, and I'm sure it makes it a lot better than standing in like the walk-in or in the
My God,
pantry
so
and
much
counting
better.
things.
Yes.
So the Toast IQ program also has a menu upsells feature.
Yes.
So how do you use that to encourage guests to try different items and boost the check?
Yeah, the menu upsells has really been a game changer for us. And I was super excited because Wiley and Rum was actually one of the first 100 restaurants to demo it out in a beta testing. And out of the 100 restaurants that was beta testing it, our restaurant was number one for menu upsells. So that was really cool. So I got to talk to a lot of the top people at Toast. They were asking a lot of questions, seeing what we were doing. And I think a lot of it, like I told them, is just meeting the guest needs. So I was able to just go in and identify the top 25 items that we sell and figure out what we could upsell on those items. And so now when the server or bartender's at the table or with the guests, it will prompt them based on what the guest is ordering to upsell them on. So if they order an order of empanadas, we look over the last week, empanadas has been our biggest seller. It's going to prompt them to ask if they would like to add on an extra empanada, for $3 or $4, or would they like to add on an extra wing, or, an extra shot in their rum punch. So it kind of bases it off of our top selling items and then just prompts them to be able to add that on. So again, it's kind of eliminating a little bit of that, interaction where maybe the server or bartender is not sure what to suggest, and it's kind of giving them that prompt to kind of help them.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And, I understand it also helps with menu updates and descriptions. Like if you're getting in maybe new items or new rums, how does it help with that?
Yeah. So again, a lot of it is just, taking a lot of that front end work off of yourself. So it'll, overlook maybe like the last 10 updated menu items we did, right? And we use certain type of description words or buzzwords along with that. And so it'll create, a new content for that based on what we've already used that kind of flows along with, the vibe and essence of our menu. So.
Do you also use it to like research some new items that might have come in, like, or a new ingredient that you don't know about?
I did recently, actually. I was trying to figure out, we're moving into the fall months. So I really want to do some cool new specials in the restaurant, kind of using fall flavors, but obviously still kind of keeping the island cuisine. And so as I was like, asking it, do you have any suggestions on fall menu items that still like incorporate, island cuisine? It came up with like 10 great recipes. I think the first one was like a jerk chicken, white bean chili. So I was like, that sounds amazing. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So are you planning to put any of those on the menu, or is it
There was a
just
couple. We definitely have to R&D, to see how they come out. It sounded good on paper, so now we have to do the research to see if it tastes just as good.
right? And do you sometimes like research different rums that, for descriptions so that it helps you put a menu description on there that is in different words?
For sure, definitely like with the drink descriptions, like you said, it's definitely helpful. I've even used it before to tell me about maybe the flavor profile of some rums that I'm not sure about. Because I can type it in and say, hey, can you explain the flavor profile on this and what it would best pair with? And so that's also very helpful as well, because like I said, we have such a large rum selection. To be able to kind of narrow that down and give suggestions based on what pairs best together is definitely a game changer.
So do you use ChatGPT for that, or do you use part of the Toast program?
I interchange between both. So sometimes the toast one's great, but again, with the toast one, it really is focused on kind of like our menu and things that are already kind of incorporated in there. To where as ChatGPT obviously is going to be way more open. So it's going to have a lot more ideas, a lot more to work with outside of just kind of our own niche that we're already in. So.
And are to-go orders a big part of your sales?
Yeah.
And so how does AI help with that?
So we've been really fortunate again to be adopted into a beta program with Toast where they call it Smart IQ ordering. And so what it does is it takes the last 6 weeks of your orders that you've done and the time it takes them to come out of your kitchen, because a lot of that is tied to our KDS, which is your kitchen display screen. And that's able to see how long it takes from when the order comes in to when it's cleared off of your screen and it's out to the guests. So they're able to track it and see where's your peak times and your down times. So in a downtime, it might quote the guests, 14 minutes on a to-go order. And on your peak times, it might quote them like 35 minutes, and it's great because, again, in the past, that's something that we would have had to manage ourselves, trying to figure out exactly what that time looks like. And they've kind of taken that responsibility from us, and they're able to give the guests a more accurate quote description based on that data. So.
Do you do delivery too? Or is it mostly with takeout orders?
So we do, we third party out. So we use a lot of the delivery services, Uber Eats, DoorDash, and it's integrated that same way, on the quote times as well.
Interesting. Wow. And AI's role in marketing, from what I understand, has been a big benefit for Wiley and Rum. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think that again, when you're trying to cut back on a lot of your like office time or things that, are taking you away from the guest facing aspect of it, you try to figure out how can I eliminate something or make it happen faster, but still great quality. So that's really where I love ChatGPT at, because again, I'm able to come up with a lot of like content for email blasts, our social media pages. I've even maybe over the last 2 or 3 months really started using ChatGPT to help even create flyers. And it's great because if it had like a base to go off of. So like it has a copy of our logo on there. Usually I give it like the basic, kind of descriptions of what I want on the logo. The more detailed, the better, obviously. It's great. So I surprise myself sometimes with how good it is.
So does ChatGPT get to know your business the more you use it?
For sure. Yeah. It's just been helpful. It's allowed me to really just drop the info in, and it just, it gives you right back to you because I utilize it so often now that it has a base knowledge already of the restaurant that I don't have to do much.
So as we get into the future of AI, how do you see other benefits evolving, or do you think you're at like peak AI usage now, or do you see it like improving as in the next few months or a year?
Yeah, I'm so interested in that. That's really going to be a great selling point to kind of see where it goes to. I went to the National Restaurant show in May in Chicago, and that was really interesting because I was able to see a lot of the vendors there were really utilizing AI, not only in like the materials they use or the products they use, but again, in simple things too, like you said, the copy and coming up with menus and just all kind of things. I was just genuinely surprised that it's really gotten such a push because I think it is a little polarizing. I think some people love AI and they think it's the wave of the future. I think some people view AI as, a replacement for the human interaction and aren't super crazy about it. I think I fall somewhere in the middle. I think it can be a benefit. It's just how you use it.
One of the early adopters in using AI in menu development is Chef Ian Ramirez, the founder of Mad Honey Culinary. In this clip, he gives some tips on how to use AI effectively in menu development.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, there's so much to learn with it and with using it and figuring out the different platforms and figure out which ones you like and that are user friendly for you. Because I feel like each platform has different types of learning curves. One of the things I've always talked about a lot is what I call layering. And layering is like when you use different platforms and to create the best outcome. So you might use 3 different platforms to create prompts. And, if you need images over here and videos over there, you can kind of interweave the different platforms together. So I think it's finding the right mix of how you need to use it and then finding the right platforms that are user-friendly for you. One of the things that it's funny, I'm glad that you asked this question because just the other day, one of my friends, she had a really big presentation that she was doing, and she uses AI a lot. She is in R&D. It's a totally different industry than our food service industry, but she still does R&D and product development. And she was realizing that she uses AI a lot. She uses it, almost too much. And so she relies on it so much. And she created this big presentation using a lot of, AI help to help kind of create some verbiage, create, her slides and stuff like that. And then, once she actually went into this beautiful presentation that she was able to piece together with all these parts from, using different AI platforms, she kind of walked herself through it and she realized she couldn't articulate the strategy behind anything because it wasn't her own strategy. And, she realized she couldn't, she couldn't, depend on that. It wasn't taking into consideration her own experience. Right. And, it was very factual. It gleaned a lot of information from the internet, but at the end of the day, it made for a terrible presentation. So she was like, so I kind of scrapped the whole thing and I went back and I started kind of the old fashioned way. And she was like, then I would go back and I'd sprinkle in some of the stuff that I saw from the AI information, but she had to kind of go back and do it her own way so she could actually articulate the strategy behind it. So I thought that was really interesting. So I think one of the biggest things to remember when you're using it, it's an amazing weapon in your arsenal. It should definitely not be your only weapon. Do not rely on it too much or, it will backfire. So you need to still be really good at what you do. If you're an organization and you adopt AI with the viewpoint of it being kind of like every team member's like executive assistant, where it could make a team of 2 and do a team of 4 or a team of 6 just by being able to use it properly. It creates those efficiencies within the organization. I think it needs to really be embraced in that manner. However, like, that's really what it is. It's an assistant. It will help you get somewhere quicker, but it doesn't mean that you need to turn off your brain and it'll just do everything for you.
Ultimately, even creative but busy chefs can use AI to simplify menu development, inventory management, and other issues. And that should do it for the latest episode of A Deeper Dive looking at AI in restaurants. Check us out next week when we look at the impact AI is having on the back of the house. And that should do it for this special episode of A Deeper Dive, which was edited, as always, by Spoons. Contributing to this podcast series has been Restaurant Business Senior Tech Editor Joe Guskowski and Senior Menu Editor Pat Colby. Kimberly Pelican helped with the artwork. You can find this and other episodes of A Deeper Dive on our website at www.restaurantbusinessonline.com/article/deeper-dive. But please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Jonathan Mays, your host, podcast producer, and the editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. Thank you for listening.